So today we're doing our lesson number 5, and it's over prepositions and pronouns. Are y'all ready for that? Did anyone get my email on prepositions and watch that video?
I did.
You did? Good job. It's just extra help as you're already advanced. He probably did a better job than I did. I haven't watched it, but I watched another one of his. And he does pretty good.
How do you say yes in Greek? No.
I think, is it yeah? Oh man, I think it's like three. Kara, it's kind of like hello. But anyway, let's just look at our vocabulary. It's a big list, right? Pretty big? But it's going to be actually pretty simple, trust me. Besides the prepositions. If you look at the last handout I gave you, the last page, this is going to be pretty helpful. I just recommend this as a go-to as you are translating. And we'll talk about that a little more. But let's just say the vocabulary after me, okay? Ana. Auntie. Apa. Ace. Ek. Pra. Soon. In. Meta. Peri. Huper. Hupa. Dia. Epi. Kata. Para. Pras. So that's all the prepositions right there. Pretty cool, right? You just said them all. Something new. Apostello. Atas. De. Didaskalos. So you should already know the verb form of this, right? Didasko. So this is how some of the vocabulary is going to be pretty easy. So instead of the I teach, it's didaskalos, and that's teacher. Ego. It's not the waffle. Amy. Hemes. Theos. Kago. Kefale. Meno. Paulos. Petros. Presbyteros. Whatever. Su. Humes. Harmantano. Yeah. So you know I believe you know the noun form of that. So now you know the verb right there. And harmartolos. Amen. Anoigo. Gar. Ekenos. Evangelia. Ergon. It's not the Lord of the Rings guy, right? Aragorn, yeah, I know. I'm just making sure. Evangelion. Jesus. Laos. Hati. Hutas. Hate. Tuta. Teknon. Kara. And Christos. Is it a lot? So what's going to help you out is some of them are names like Paulos, which is Paul, Petros, Peter, Christos, Jesus, yes.
A lot of these words, like technos, or like I forgot them already, but a lot of these words sound like words that we use in English, and are those words that we use in English derived from these Greek words?
Depending on which ones you're talking about, yes. Yep. Like apostolos, apostle, for example. So yeah, and then some of these words like didaskalos, harmatano, you already know either the noun or verb form, or now the adjective form. So there's really only a few things that you have to memorize, and that should be helpful. Oops, what happened? There we go. So prepositions. As you look at the prepositions, you'll notice that some take one case, two cases, and three cases. And this is what's going to be the hardest thing to grasp, especially when it comes to the 2 and 3 cases. Now, if you look at your book on page, where the vocabulary is 43 and 44, you'll notice that because this grammar book uses an 8-case system, and I'm a firm believer in a 5-case system because there's only 5 endings, some of these can be changed. So like in, under the 2-case, that is a 1-case system, and it falls under the dative case. Then on page 44, you have dia. So the ablative and genitive, I would classify those as both genitive, and so that would fall under a 2-case, so genitive and accusative. I'm just giving you this information, so just so you can be aware. And then kata, you have the ablative genitive, which again I would say that's just the genitive, and so that's another 2-case preposition. That would just help you less to memorize, and I think it's just easier and better and fits with the actual Greek language, but that's just me. But other than that, you'll notice that these prepositions take a case. What's it? The word that follows the preposition, that needs to be the case that the preposition applies to. I'm trying to think of the technical term for that, but I'm going blank on that one. So like ana needs the word that follows it needs to be in the accusative case. Anti needs to be in the genitive case. Apa needs to be in the genitive case. Ace needs to be in the accusative case. So that's going to actually help you when it comes to translating. So when you see a preposition, it's going to be like a prepositional phrase, and you just kind of put brackets around that. And I'll show you an example of that later. That will just mark that off, and you can translate that really last. And I'll explain that more when you get to that. But just so you are aware, it actually took me about a year to actually get all these down, and even then I still have trouble sometimes. So don't expect you to have it all down today or next week. Some people can. If you can, go for it. But I do recommend just having this vocabulary sheet and just referring to that when needed. I think that's the best case, especially when we're kind of condensing a few things down on that. Does anyone have questions on these? Okay, so out of the prepositions, because they go with other words, what happens is if the next word begins with a vowel, this process of elision happens. And with that, so any of the prepositions that end with a vowel, so like ana, anti, apa, pretty much all of them except for pra and peri fall into this case of elision. Okay? So if you look at either the board or on your handout, on the preposition handout right here, you'll notice if it's before a smooth breathing mark, all the vowel just drops of the preposition. And so instead of ana, it would be on. Okay? But if there is a rough breathing mark, some of the characters or letters need to change. So usually anything like that has a stop in the sound, so like t or p, it's not something that continues on. It's almost frictionless. So instead of auntie, it would be anth. And the reason why is as more a phonological reason, because the tau, you have to make that t sound, and it stops. Whereas th, you can almost keep the th going. You have to remember that Greek is really a fast-spoken language, kind of like Spanish, and so there's some phonological changes that need to happen. So tau would change into a theta, and p would change into a phi. That's the main things that you need to know. Does anyone have any questions on that? That's pretty easy. Oh yeah, and speaking of memorizing prepositions, if you look at the handouts in the top right-hand corner, you'll notice that there's a chart that shows you the frequencies of prepositions. And you'll notice that at the very bottom, in is used the most. So if you want to memorize these, I would recommend memorizing them in the order that they most happen. So start off by memorizing in, then do ace, ek, epi, pros, and so on and so forth. You still need to be familiar with them all, but that's just a good way to start off at a pace that you can do it and be able to read it more fluently. So, but when it comes to the uses of the prepositions, it's really when you look at the case that it ends with. So you have the word, the preposition, plus what follows, and whatever that case is will determine if it's more than a one case preposition. It will determine the meaning or the use of the preposition. So, for example, kata. If you look right here at this little mouse right here coming down, he's coming down. Well, kata plus the genitive, if I am right, it is coming down from. So if you look at this little chart right here, it kind of help you out. But you also have a kata right here plus the accusative, and you have this mouse leaning up. The mouse is along or side or next to it or according to it, the cheese. But anyway, this is kind of helpful. Dia plus the genitive, he's the little superhero mouse is going through. Hupa, this little mouse at the bottom, poor guy. Well, he's under the cheese. Ace plus the accusative, you're going into. Ek plus the genitive is you're going away from. And really, when you understand the case system, it sort of makes sense. So if you're going into something, it's going to need an object. So it's going to have be an accusative case. Well, ek is from or away from. And so, in the genitive, you don't necessarily need the preposition ek to make that case. However, to make it explicit, you can apply the prepositional ek plus the genitive. Does that make sense? Remember, the genitive by itself, you could say from in the ablative case or ablative sense. Well, you can do the same thing by adding the prepositional phrase. And you have the Perry with the cat. He's around the cheese. So I thought these little things are kind of helpful to understand how the prepositions work. So if we look at this example up here in the houses, ace plus the accusative deals with motion, and its basic meaning is into. Again, not again, but just so you know, the definitions that are in the book, these are just the basic meanings. They can actually be more than that. So ace, for example, could be in, into. I think that's the ones I remember off the top of my head. So looking at the sentence, ace, tain, okion, it says into the house. Pretty simple. Any questions on how it works? It's pretty much similar to the English language, except for you're dealing with a case system with it. So when you see these prepositions, look for the case that follows it, and that'll help you determine the meaning of the preposition. Cool? Pretty simple. Any questions on that? Okay. The next thing that prepositions can do is form compound words. And actually, compound words can happen with more than just prepositions, but the primary compound words that you see in the New Testament are formed with prepositions. Then there's three primary reasons why a compound word is made. The first one is pretty simple. Sometimes it can mean what both of them other words mean together. So, for example, apa and ago, apa-ago, right here. Ago means I lead, whereas apa means away. So, apa-ago means I lead away. So that's one sense that it could be used. Second would be it intensifies the meaning of the word. I don't have an example off the top of my head right now. I should have got one. Maybe when I think of it. But instead of combining the meanings together, it just intensifies the main word that it's compounded with, the preposition. I should have got an example to think about. So let's just say apa-ago was a different word, different meaning. And let's just say instead of I lead, it means I lead. That'd be an example, but that's not a very good one because I don't have a word. So it just intensifies the meaning. So that's the second one. Third one is really it's just a word that, it's kind of like butterfly, just there. It doesn't intensify, it doesn't change the meaning, it's just a word in and of itself. So a lot of people use ana gnosko as an example, which means I am reading, but gnosko is I know, right? And ana is up. Some people will say that because we're so far removed from when these words were created, but when you know something, but you're reading it, but it's coming up to you. That's an example, but that's pretty stretched. The other one would be ecclesia. I think you'll probably hear many times that it means called out ones, but really, I would argue that's not the meaning. It just means assembly, a community, church, congregation. There's really, in the Koine Greek period, there's no really meaning of called out ones, if that makes sense. So there's three ones, so it just means you can combine the words to make a new meaning. You can, it's just a word that's been used and has no extra meaning. And three would be intensifies the original word that the preposition compounds with. Did I make that clear? Okay, hopefully. That's basically all you need to know on that one. The easy thing is there's 18 prepositions that are usually compound, so it's almost all of them. And it just kind of helps you get to know them. I believe that's also on the handout. Yeah. So it's the top of the 12 mice one. It just shows you the 18 most compound words. Might be an example on here. So yeah, often in the intensive right here, apa katena, I kill, or I kill. Some people would say it's I kill off, but it's like really intensifying the meaning of kateno. But yeah. That's pretty much it for prepositions. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Any questions on those? Yay, nay? They work similar to English. Just you have to deal with the case system. So next in chapter 7 of the book, at the end, I think, on page 54, we are going to look at the ame verb. This is one of the most important words in the Greek language, the same as in English. You almost can't make a sentence without it. It's just the to be verb. And let's go here. So ame verbs. So the Greek verb system, we've already learned the o conjugation, the omega conjugation, and ame actually falls in the me conjugation. So o would be luo, lues, lue, luamen, luete, and luusi. Ame comes from a different type of verb system, and it's from the me conjugation. Some people say this is the older form. It's kind of like, imagine you're a caveman, you say, me eat. Anyway, it's kind of a joke type thing, but I don't know if it's true, but it's the older way. It's like, me do this instead of I do this. So that's what people say. I don't know how true that is. But yeah, like the verb to be in English, ame is a very important verb in the Greek. So when we look at the paradigm, which is on your handout, the table handout on the back side, I believe, you could say this after me if you want. But this is something just to be very familiar with because it shows up almost every page of the Bible, if not every other sentence. So you have ame. You can say it after me. Ame. A. Esti. Esmen. Este. AC. And you'll notice that there's the movable noon. And do you remember why the movable noon is, or why it would show up? Does anyone know? Remember?
Depending on the next word.
Depending on. So if the next word vowel. Yep. And what's the other one? End of the sentence. Okay. And sometimes it's just there. So I don't know why, it just is. So ame is I am, a is you are, st is he, she, or it is, depending on the context. And esmen is we are, este is you are, and ac is they are. So ame technically does not have a voice, but as often when you're looking at parsing guides, like online or something like that, you'll see a present active indicative. Well, the active voice is usually supplied just because it falls in line with all the other words, but really, and that's true since it does not have a voice. So the active would not really be there. And the reason why is because it is a state of being, or expresses a state of being. And since the verb expresses a state of being, they do not take direct objects, or these anyway. Ame is seen as a copula, which means linking verb, and often links the subject to another noun in the nominative case. So that's pretty important. So usually when you see ame, it's going to be the word that it links to or follows is in the nominative case. And the easiest way to understand the ame verbs is if you have a it's going to let me write. Hold on 1 second. I charged it, and I don't think I connected it. I know. Bad.
All right, Josh, you're up.
Okay, so you have the noun, and you have the noun and another noun or whatever in the they're both going to be in the nominative case. So the ame, you know what it does? It acts like an equal signs.
It's not up there.
It's not up there?
Nope.
Dude.
Josh, he's
There it goes. There we go.
All right.
Is it hot in here? All right. So I'm just going to erase this and do this all over again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, there's some more.
So you have a noun in the nominative case, and you have another noun that all that Amy does is basically is like an equal sign. Boom. So he is great. He equals great. Boom. Another thing to know is that the Greek language may omit the ame verb if it is understood from the context. This means that when you're translating, you may have to supply the to be verb. Pretty easy. It's very important to know that. And sometimes, yes.
So, would you actually put in the second way to use adjectives, or is it always implied?
Say it again.
Like, I can't remember which way it is, but like, of the three ways that adjective can be used,
Yes.
the one where it's like the linking verb thing, it normally it's implied, but do you ever have a time where the verb is actually there?
Oh, for the predicate adjective? The one where it's like
Yeah.
the church is small?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be, it can be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way that we would know which to be verb to put in there would be which of a person and number the subject is.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Person, number, subject is, yep. So usually first person is I am. Second person is are. I think really it's just the am, are, and is. So if you got those down, whatever makes sense in English. Again, the most problem with translation is English issues, not Greek issues. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, no, I don't. Give me a second. It's not clicking. I was going to say something.
Nice going, Josh.
Yeah, see, it's baby brain, you know. Baby brain. Anyway, I'll move to look. If you look on page 55, on number 6, the English statement "there is" has no direct counterpart in Greek. This construction is used in English to indicate that the subject of the sentence is to follow, as in, there is a sin that leads to death, 1 John 5:16. And the Greek in this verse reads, estin harmartia pras thanaton. So although Greek does not have this particular construction, there will be cases in which sentences or verses will have to be translated into English with this sense. So just keep that in mind. It's just basically there is. Often the subject is kind of not there to make that case. Man, that's something I was going to say. Anyway, just know that the Greek ame verb is often implied in many cases. Yep, there we go. So, any questions on ame verb? We got some thunder going. So, pronouns. We're flying through this, I think. What time is it?
It is 7:30.
Yes, we are. Okay, so pronouns. So, a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or other substantive that has already been used or is obvious from the context. Everyone remembers what the word substantive means? Acts as a noun. Okay. So if you hear the word substantive, it means something that's acting as a noun.
Yeah, because when we look at adjectives, that's where it drops off the noun.
Yeah.
And so I thought it's a substitute for the noun.
Correct.
Yep.
Substantival use of the adjective. Yep, so the noun that the pronoun replaces is called the antecedent. Antecedent is a very important word and very important to grasp when you're translating. And the main reason why, especially if you look at a book like Old Testament in Greek, Hosea, you'll kind of wanting to know who the subject is or who the he is, for example, because he is a pronoun. And it could be either Hosea, it could be God, so you kind of have to figure it out and look at the context. So a pronoun must agree with its antecedent in gender and number. So that's important you can underline that if you want to. It's very important to know, gender and number. Again, know that the antecedent may not be there if the context makes it obvious of who the subject is or the antecedent is.
Where is this? Do you know what page?
Top left of page 50.
Oh yeah, I jumped to the Amy verb because
End of 7 hours.
yes, sorry, because I wish they did the Amy verb at in chapter 2 when we looked at the verb system, but they didn't do that. Anyway, so it's at the top of page 50 if you want to follow along. The case of the pronoun is determined by its own use of the sentence or clause. Like other substantives, pronouns are declined according to case. That makes it pretty fun, trust me. So everyone knows how a pronoun works? A personal pronoun works, I should say. So like, my name is Chris. I am your Greek teacher. The I is the personal pronoun that replaces the proper noun Chris, my name. Yes. So my name, Chris, is the antecedent of the pronoun I. Got it? And the reason pronouns are used the same way in English, it just helps reduce the monotony, whatever. Monotony, there we go. Dang. I know, I'm like,
Baby brain.
hey, like I said, baby brain, okay? I just had a baby. I didn't have a baby, but my wife did. So like the example here, I have bread and I am eating it sounds better than I have bread and I'm eating bread. It's like almost going back to caveman style. Bread. I like bread. Okay, or me like bread. So in Greek, you also need to understand that each word has an assigned gender to it. Remember that? So bread, for example, is masculine in Greek. And so the pronoun that replaces it must be masculine in gender. So eko ton arton, which means I have bread. Kai estio aton. And that is, estio is a verb. It means I eat. And aton is the pronoun. And it's in the masculine. So you wouldn't say, I have the bread and I eat him. You just wouldn't do that. I mean, you could say that. Technically, I guess you could say that, but in English it wouldn't make sense because, like, who's him? Is it James inside the bread?
James bread. That doesn't sound good.
Yeah. So it's probably best to keep that in mind when you're translating. Instead of saying I have the bread and I eat him, I would say I eat it. Okay. So artos is the nominative case. It's just the dictionary form. And arton is in the accusative case. So I have, and it's going to take the object. Yep.
Why does it have artos in parentheses, but then in the sentence it's arton?
Okay. So if you look on the board or look on the back side of your table handout sheet, Aaron, would you like these? So yeah, you'll notice this humongous list of pronouns. Take it in. It's a long, humongous list, right?
Some of these have, like, it's
Dude.
do some of them have prepositions in them? Yours turn.
Please.
It's not a-
You're up.
Josh was closest to Chris than the rest of us. Watch.
Mm.
None of us want that. Not even James.
Eli, what did you say?
I asked if some of these pronouns had prepositions compounded in them. See that of or from it or to by.
No, that's just the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of.
So it's sort of like.
Well, not really.
Os, o, on.
I'm not blind. Didn't I just have my pen up here?
Did you ask if they had prepositions, Eli?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on the floor.
Prepositions, that kind of look like articles sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there's really no compounding.
It's not compounding, but they share similar endings to like the article.
Wait, yeah, they start. Well, that's just the agenda case endings or the dative case endings.
Yep.
Yeah. So, if you look at your book on page 51, you'll notice that the dative neuter singular is misspelled. So you want to correct that. And if you look at mine, I misspelled the feminine dative plural. It should be autais.
The third person feminine plural, right?
Yeah, third person feminine plural, sorry. Yep, third person feminine plural in the dative case. So as if you look on here, it's,
Replacing the omicron with an alpha.
yeah. Yeah, and then in the book, you want to take the eta out of the neuter, third person neuter singular dative. Dative. Neuter singular dative. They're both dative. So on my handout I handed out, I misspelled the feminine plural, but in the book,
Oh, the handout. Okay.
yeah,
What the heck are you talking about?
in the book, they misspelled.
Gotcha. Okay. I see.
I'm just saying
What was the book? The dative neuter.
singular of the third person. So at the very bottom, left-hand side,
What should it be?
just take the eta out and put a.
I'll wait. That's not right.
Oh, so it's just auto.
Yeah, auto. So I feel sorry for whoever uses this book that doesn't know Greek. Anyway, we got the misspelling out of the way, but I understand why there's misspelling because there's just so many of them. Anyway, I did a lot of copy and pasting. I did the wrong copy and pasting for the... So when you're looking at this, you'll see first, second, and third. Easiest way to recognize the third person pronoun is looking at the a or at at the beginning of the word. I like to say them over there. Just how I do it. Okay? And if you look at the endings of the third person, you'll notice that they are pretty much the exact same thing as the adjective endings, except for the neuter singular, nominative, and accusative. Instead of auton, it's auta. That's the only difference. So third person, just remember them over there, and know that the neuter singular, nominative, and accusative is auta instead of auton. And that matches the endings of the adjectives, which is basically the second declensions for masculine neuter and first declension for the feminine endings. Where it comes, the hard part, or tricky part, is the first and second person. The easiest way to memorize those, or at least recognize those, is when you say me, you have the M and the E sound in there. Well, you can almost do the same thing with the first person. So you have go, mu or mu, moi or moi, and me or me. So if you look at those, you have the sound, and you also have the meh sound. Pretty easy. So if you think me, it's that. And if you look at the plural side, are you listening? You have the hey mace, hey moan, hey mean, hey mas, and it has a at the very beginning. Same thing. It ends with the e sound as the me sounds. Does that make sense? Just a way to help you memorize it. Second person, you just have to memorize the singular, su, soy, se. Just know that the sigma is for second person, and the humes, humon, humin, and humas, the upsilon kind of reminds you of the ending of u. It looks like a U, but it's upsilon. So that's how you would know, memorize that is a second person U. Cool? So getting down to the nitty-gritty of these, I should just refresh, ego, hemes, has the sound. Just think, it sounds like an E or M. It's going to be first person. Second person, su and humes, it looks like a U. In the plural, you just have to memorize the sigma, S sounding for the second person. And third person, them over there, okay? Third person. So getting down to the nitty gritty, so this is the fun part. So, where do I begin? So ego, the nominative case in the first person, singular or plural, hemes, and also the second person nominative case, su, and plural, hemes. You'll notice that, how do I word it? So in the nominative case, generally the subject is already implied in the sentence. So if there's a verb, guess what? The verb has a subject. Remember luo or luamen? And then you also, you have luo, luamen. And so the idea of adding a personal pronoun is really not necessary. So oftentimes it is there for emphasis. Okay? So the nominative case for specifically first person is mainly there for emphasis. So instead of like luo, I lose. Well, if I say ego luo, I lose. And this is where your translation philosophy is going to have to kick in. You're going to have to figure out how, when you translate it, are you going to show that emphasis? Are you going to underline it? Are you going to make it bold? Are you going to italicize it? Or you want to kind of intensify it in one sense to say, I myself lose. Does that make sense? So you have to kind of ask yourself, how can I show this in the original, in English, that this is an intensified verb or intensified pronoun?
In verses where it says I, even I, is that the case, or is that a separate word?
I'd have to look at an example of that. Probably. Yeah, you could. Yeah, I, even I. Yeah, that's probably a good one. I have to look at it actually in Greek too.
One really frequent use that you see, at least in the book of John, see ego eimi a lot, is when Jesus says, I am the door, or I am the shepherd, or
Yeah.
I am the resurrection. You have that a lot.
Yes, it does. Which I'm going to show an example of that later. So, the exception to it, if you look on page 52, on 1, under 7.5, under 1, so it can also be used for contrast instead of emphasis. But generally, if the verb is not there and you need to show the pronoun or the subject, like ego. So if you look at the very bottom, contrast of 7.5 under 1, contrast may be indicated as follows. Ego huios. So there's no verb there. It says I, son. Then su de doulas. And you, servant. Often when you're translating, you would say I am a son or the son, depending on context. And you are a servant or the servant, depending on context. Cool? So that would be a case where it's not necessarily emphasized, but it's just there for contrast. But I would assume, from my experience anyway, that usually the verb is not there. And often, that's exactly what I was going to say on the AME. So sometimes in languages, when you're having a verb and the verb is not there, it's kind of there, not always, but can be there to get the eye of the reader, okay? It works or the listener. So if you're, that car is beautiful, right? Yeah, you could say that, but if I say that car, beautiful, it kind of like it should draw your attention to that sentence or that phrase. Does that make sense? So if the verb is not there, or to be verb is not there, it can be there to cause you to your sentence. Anyway, I just remembered what I was going to say now. Got it. Anyway, that's back to now back to the pronouns. Hopefully I didn't lose anyone there. But yeah, so if you look, contrast may be indicated as follows. Ego huios, there's no verb there, but it's there for contrast. And oftentimes if the verb's not there, you need a pronoun. And that would also be another reason why it wouldn't be emphasis. It would just be a needing of the personal pronoun. Now, if you look at the genitive, dative, and accusative, you ready to move on from that?
I have one question.
Yes.
So in the Greek there,
Yes.
the things that are missing are the I and the you.
No. So ego and su. Ego is I and su is you.
Is it ours?
But those are not personal pronouns.
Ego is a personal pronoun. So if you look,
This is talking about the omission of personal pronouns. Why are they in there then?
I'm just using that as an example. I wasn't actually using that as the book. I would have to reread this. So,
Was my question?
yeah, I understand what you're saying. So omission of the personal pronoun.
Nice catch.
Yeah, he's saying that usually they're not there because you get it from the verb.
I think, yeah, that's what I was kind of saying.
These are the cases when they are there.
So basically, normally the personal pronoun is not there because the
And he's saying
verb
to
supplies it.
indicate the contrast, they are there.
They can be there. There's no hard set rules in grammar. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, they can be there. So all I was saying is that they're used for mainly two different ways: emphasis and contrast. But primarily, it's because the verb is there if it's for emphasis, and if there's not a verb, it's usually contrast. But it can be contrast with the verb. Again, there's no hard fast rule there. I was just using that example. Clear? Sort of? Okay. You can always ask me more questions. So when we look at the dative, genitive, dative, and accusative, you'll notice in the singular they have a epsilon added in the first person. And you'll also notice that for both first person and second person singular, you'll see that they have accents. Whereas if you look at the or and the what follows, there is no accents or epsilon. You see that? Everyone see that? So if I circled it, I keep losing my pen. Did I drop it? No, here we go. So here you have the epsilon and you have the accent, whereas this has no epsilon and no accent. Here you have an accent, but no accent. See that? Got everyone? Okay. Well, the reason for the accent or the epsilon is for emphasis. It's just a way of saying, that is mine, or you gave that to me. Does that make sense? Instead, you just gave that to me. Cool? So what has the epsilon in the accent is going to be emphasized, and what does not is going to be just regular way of saying it. That's primary use. There's a couple exceptions, such as if you look at number 3 on page 52, an exception to this norm is prepositions usually follow the emphatic accented forms. So we have in, emoi, op, emu. The exception would be pros, me. So just so you know that prepositions can have the emphatic form. But generally, when you see the emu, emoi, eme, su with the accent, soy with the accent, se with the accent, it's going to be 9 times out of 10 emphatic. Got that? So really, when you're looking at these, you'll notice that you have the u in the genitive case. That'll kind of help you determine, hey, look, this is an genitive case. You have the own. That's pretty much all the way through. That's going to be in the genitive case. Pretty easy. The hard part is going to be the dative. It's got an oi. This is something you're going to have to, or in at the end for the plural. This is something that you're going to have to recognize and be familiar with. And also the accusative of the epsilon at the end. And also the first person and the second person nominative case can also be in the vocative case. But that's just additional information that you don't see often. Okay, did I lose anyone yet? And on the table thing, you see the English stuff right here. This is just a general way of translating it. Usually the pronouns, especially the genitive, is going to follow after the word that it modifies, I believe. So I think it's under number 2 on page 52. Greek uses the unaccented forms of the genitive case of personal pronouns to indicate possession. Note that in this usage, the pronoun follows the noun, unlike in English. So the example here is ha, logos, mu. Well, literally it means the word of me, but that's you don't really say that in English, so you would change that to my word. Does that make sense? I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions on that? Aaron, does it seem like I missed anything? Okay. Again, there's some translation philosophies that you have to kind of think through. It's like, how am I going to make this look emphatic in my translation? Because it's easy. Because if you italicize it, for example, are you going to follow? Because King James, for example, italicizes words that they supply. You can make it bold. You can make it all capital letters. I mean, you got to just think through what's best if you're going to share it anyway. But mainly it's for your use, I would assume. Now, if you look at the table and the third person masculine singular nominative case, you see autos. Well, has some special uses.
Of course it does.
Of course it does.
The Greeks did not like regularity, did they?
No, and when we start...
English speakers are ones to talk.
Yeah, I suppose.
I know. I was trying to pronounce something the other day, and I'm like, wait, this is not how you pronounce it.
With
Just
my-
Just saying. Okay, special uses. So there's two primary special uses. This thing's kind of fidgety. So there's two primary special uses. Number one is when used with an article in the attributive position, kind of like the same way as the adjective use. Regardless of the case, remember that, it corresponds to the English adjective same. So this is called the adjectival atas. So the example is ha atas lagas or ha lagas ha atas. Both those mean the same word. So basically atas in this situation just means same. Got it? It's a pretty hard rule to get in your head because it's not something that English speakers do. We don't use a word for something else that often.
So when does it mean same?
In the attributive position,
So like an adjective.
just like the adjectives that you learn. Remember those three that you learned? You got the attributive, predicative, and substantively use of the adjective. Well, atas has the same set of rules. So again, this is very similar to the attributive adjective. So the example here is ha agathos apostolos, or ha apostolos ha agathos. It means the good apostle. Same thing. So this means,
Can you tell which one it is?
huh? What?
How can you tell if it's good or same?
Well, this has agathos, and this has atas. Agathos means good. Can you see that? No, you can't.
It's not a different use of aptos. It's just another example
Yeah,
of using a word. It's a different word.
it's a different word. I'm just using, this is exactly the same as the attributive adjective.
So they basically, they took the pronoun and made it function exactly like an adjective.
Yes.
Exactly. It's almost as if there's two words. There's the pronoun atos and there's the adjective atos, which means same.
You could look at it that way.
Yeah. They just overloaded the same word.
Yes, basically. Number two, when used without the article in the predicate position, this is not like the predicate adjective. It intensifies the noun it modifies and corresponds to the English pronoun self. So like himself, herself, itself, themselves, yourself. And this is called the intensive atas. Does that make sense? So the example here is ha lagas atas. There's no article before atas. Or atas ha lagas. So this means the word itself. So
Yeah, acting like an adverb here.
yeah, it'd be acting like an adverb. Yeah, I think so. Is that adverb itself? No?
Because it's modifying a noun.
You're right.
Yeah.
Adverbs can... Okay, yeah.
Pretty sure itself is just a reflexive pronoun.
Reflexive pronoun, yeah, it is. I gotta think about that now. But it's in the predicate. Just know that it's in the predicate position, so it looks like an adjective, predicative adjective, but it's not understood in the same way. So if you looked at the agathos, which means good, so the ha apostolos agathos would be the apostle is good. So the predicate adjective would just supply the is to be verb. Whereas this one is supplying, or is, I should say, itself or herself, himself, depending on the context and the word that it's modifying. Cool? Okay, I think that's all you need to know about the personal pronouns. Any questions on personal pronouns?
It's 8 o'clock.
It is 8 o'clock, okay. So, I'm going to kick up speed. So, demonstrative pronouns. There are two, this is starting in chapter 8. There are two demonstrative pronouns. Look at page 58 if you want to be precise. There are two demonstrative pronouns in Greek. You have the near, which is hutas, hutas, and you have the far, which is ekenos. So if you look at your table handout, I believe it's at the bottom right hand, you'll see the table for it. So the near singular would be, if you want to write it in to help you out, it would be translated as this. The near plural would be these. And that would be under the hutas. And then the ekenos, which is the far demonstrative pronoun, that would be, the singular would be that, and the plural would be those. If you want to write it in so you could be familiar with it. Ekenos. If you look at your, that list. Yep. Very bottom right of the table handout. I handed out on the front side. So that's what this lists right here. So I guess I could do it right here. So this would be this, these, and this is that, those. Does that make sense? Pretty simple. Couple things. If you remember what the feminine nominative case of the personal pronoun, third person pronoun. Actually, if you look at your chart, tell me what is the difference between this one and the one on the back side in the nominative case, feminine, singular, and plural. Third person, feminine. Just look at them and tell me what's different. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
An accent.
There's an accent, yeah. There's primary one, though, I'm looking for. So if you look at the personal pronoun, third person, on the back side, look at the feminine, and then the nominative case. Look at both singular and plural. And compare the singular and plural of these, and tell me what the difference is. The breathing mark. There you go. What is the difference on the breathing mark?
The one on the demonstrative is rough.
Rough, yes. There you go. And the one on the pronoun is not rough, right? So keep that in mind when you're translating. They look alike, but the breathing mark is what makes it different.
The breathing mark, does that affect your translation or just your pronunciation?
Both.
How does it affect your translation?
Because the near demonstrative is this, and the personal pronoun is her.
Oh, right.
Does it make sense? So that there's a difference. The near one is this, and the personal pronoun is her. And its main difference, there's the accent difference, but the main difference is the rough breathing mark in the near demonstrative, whereas the personal pronoun has a smooth breathing mark. Okay. So for these are just the cases. It follows after the adjective endings. It's just all you need to memorize is really the ending, or you already should have the endings memorized. If you don't, it's a good time to memorize it. So you just need to recognize the toot and the oot and the tot. It's the main thing you need to memorize for the near one, and the Canaan for the far. So this basically works as, this one or that one. So remember, near is this or these, and that and those. Okay, so under 8.4, the uses. So demonstratives can function either as adjectives or as pronouns. Most often they are used to modify nouns. And they must agree with the nouns they modify in case, gender, and number. So if you want to, underline that so you can be aware of that. In this usage, the demonstrative is always in the predicate position. I think we would expect a attributive position, but it's in the predicate position. So it's always in the predicate position. So usually grammar doesn't have hard and fast rules. Well, here's a hard and fast rule. That would be right here, the example. It would be without the article. Well, I don't think there's an article. Anyway, so it would be hutas ha lagos, which is this word. And the other example is in ekene te, or ecclesia, which is in that church. So the idea of the demonstrative is basically it's pointing out something. It's like this over here, that over there, these, those, the main purpose. The second use is substantively. In this usage, the pronoun stands alone without a noun to modify and is never preceded by the article. So the example here is hutas lege lagon. And so hutas is by itself, so it's this man is speaking a word or the word. Does that make sense? So you have to be careful not to confuse the substantival use of the demonstrative pronoun with the adjectival use. So yeah. And then a couple of extra things that happen at the end of the book that they kind of thrown into the chapter. So plural neuter subjects, for example, they often take singular verbs. That's just what you just need to know. Plural neuter subjects can take singular verbs. So that would be an exception to the agreement rule. You remember the agreement rule for verbs? They need to agree with their noun and person number. Well, neuter plural nouns don't necessarily agree in number. They will have singular instead of plural. Does that make sense? Give me a look. No. So, apostolos, lege, apostle said. So a neuter word, let's say children. Well, in English we would say children are, but in Greek it would be children is. Does that make sense? Cool? Cool. Next thing that they threw in is conjunctions. Conjunctions basically join together words, phrases, and clauses. Conjunctions are classed as coordinate or subordinate based on usage. Coordinate conjunctions can connect two or more words, phrases, or clauses, and the and, but, therefore, or, nor. And subordinate conjunctions introduce dependent clauses. So that's pretty important to know. So like although, if, when, because, that. So if you're making a sentence, because I ran, can't stand alone, right? That is a dependent clause. It requires something for. But if I said, and I ran to the store, can be by itself in one sense. It's just adding an independent clause. Okay. Particles, this means small parts. They have a hard time fitting into a grammatical thing, so they just make a random spot, and this means the smallest thing. This has a whole bunch of randomness in it. The ones that we have learned or are going to learn is amen and u. Amen is truly, u is the negative particle, which means not. So if you look at under 8.7 on page 60, at the very last sentence, it says the negative particle u is normally placed immediately in front of the word it negates. So the example is ha prophetes u didaske in to hiero. Yeah. So we know, so here's the example of the preposition right here. So you just put that in brackets right here. See what I'm doing? I'm just going to put that in there because it's in plus the dative case. This is dative.
Prepositional phrase.
Prepositional phrase, yes, sorry. Yeah. And the reason why you know it's dative, because easy way to recognize it is what? Trevor?
The
Iota subscript. There we go. So got that marked off, and then we begin with looking at for the verb. The verb is didaske. Do you remember what person number this is? Third, yep. Third singular. So we would expect a third a singular noun, and what we do, ha prophetes. Now, does this article connect with this noun? And if so, why?
What was the question?
Well, so this is a noun, right? And this is the article, right? So I guess what does the article go with? Does it make the noun definite, or is that article used differently? And why? Yeah. Does it get you to think?
What seems weird about it?
Yeah, what seems weird about it? Between ha and prophetes.
Right, the
Ending doesn't match, right?
match up.
Yeah. So if we remember back to our endings in the first declension nouns, the masculine endings begin with what in the nominative case? Do you remember? Yeah, cheat sheet.
Sorry, which declension first?
First declension. Masculine. Nominative case.
Us.
As or ace, right? Yeah. So this has ace right here. So that would be nominative case, and this is the article is in the nominative case, and they agree in gender because they're both masculine, and so they go together. So it's the prophet, and we know that didaske is from didasko, and didasko means what? Teach. So the prophet teaches in the temple. But we have this thing that we have not yet translated, which is u. And there's really two ways you can translate this, and it really depends on the context. So the one that's provided here is the prophet is not teaching in the temple. The other way is the prophet does not teach in the temple. Does that make sense? So you have to really determine context to
Has not, is he going to?
has not, is he going to?
As
gotta think about that. I guess so, yeah. I would, because the present would be anything that's happening now and going onward.
In that case, I guess it could be will
Be,
not teach.
huh?
In that case, will not teach might be another option.
Yeah, I think that's stretching it, but yeah.
How do you know that's not?
Because u is the negative particle, which means not. It's a new,
It's part of the random things. That's right.
yeah, part of the random things.
And then the only thing that differentiates it from. Never mind. Sorry, that's
No, I mean,
sigma. I thought there was another word that's the same, but it's a
Oh.
sigma, not.
oh, the su instead of u?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta, it's a recognizing thing too. Sure is. Dots and tittles, yep. And remember, I think it's the second lesson I did. I showed you the structure of I think, Philippians 2 or Philippians 1. Yeah, Philippians 1, 8 through 12 or something like that. Well, there's certain words like hati and gar. They help you understand some of the structure. Hati is a subordinate conjunction that introduces a subordinate clause. In other words, it cannot stand alone. So that's going to kind of help you keep in mind the structure. So if you were to like create put the sentence out, you can almost put the hati as the beginning of a subpoint. Does that make sense? The other use of a hati, which it does not explain here, is it can also introduce quotations. So like Jesus said that, because hati means can mean that or because. And often you can not leave that untranslated. You could say Jesus said, comma, quotation. Does that make sense? So there's really two reasons why you can do hati. Gar, on the other hand, introduces usually dependent clauses. It gives they stand alone. They can stand alone. Independent clauses. There we go. That stand alone. So John 3:16. For God so loved the world, and He gave His only begotten Son. You don't need anything more than that, if that makes sense. Yep. Also, both of these are causal, so they give cause to the preceding what happens before in the context, in the passage. Okay, any questions? Got a lot. Went over a lot. Head blown?
Just hurting.
Hurting, okay. Hey, you had 2 weeks off, though.
That's probably why it's hurting.
It might be true. Because we're running over time, I'm just going to, we're not going to say these unless you want me to. But if you see the ones with the red dots next to it, should be 11 of them. That's one I would like you to memorize. Prepositions, I just want you to slowly learn and get a hold of. Keep looking back to until you have the time to memorize. Can you see the dots over there? Okay, the first one is apostello. It is under chapter 7, 7.1, I believe. The second one is didaskalos. Third one is kephale. Fourth was meno, which is right under that one. Okay, then on 8.1, I believe, anoigo. Evangelia, ergon, euangelion, laos, teknon, and kara. Got it? Did I need to say any of them over again? Okay. So the homework is going to be out of on 8.10, and it's just going to be 5, 7, and 9. And since we don't have time to do any, I'm going to just go to this application thing. Remember 8.10, 5, 7, and 9. One or two of those might be on the quiz for next week. So just for like a devotions application, looking at the personal pronouns, can everyone see John 6:35? Over here, can y'all see it? Is that better?
Much better.
Yes.
Okay. So John 6:35 is Apin, tois ha Jesus, ego eimi ha artas tes zoes. So really, there's looks like two words that we haven't covered, which is apin and zoes. Zoes is life. Apin is kind of related to lego. It's just kind of past tense, so instead of says, or it's said. And I'll just go ahead and do this. So this is going to be the verb, which is going to be aorist, but we haven't got that over yet. So it's Jesus is going to be the subject. Said, do you know what atois is? No, it wouldn't be himself. Because the intensified pronoun is atas is going to be in the it would be atas ha Jesus.
Is it where it's used as the same?
Nope, because there would be it would be in the attributive position. It's going to require a article. But
Maybe to him or to them.
to them, yeah, atois, right? To them. So that's kind of helps you see how it works, right? Then we have the ego eimi. So it'd be I. Now how would you who wants to make this? So eimi already has is I am. So how would you like to make this emphatic? You want some like underline underneath it?
I think I myself is good for me.
I myself, there we go.
No, all you need is just all caps because he's referencing
It's true, but
the name.
he is. Depends on translation, philosophy, and if he's referring to that, which most people would say he is.
Well, but is it translated? I mean, in the Greek, is it the same?
So it could be like a transliteration, I am, or
So in the verses where it is translated, I
well, not
am,
transliterated, but
like when they asked him, when Jesus said before Abraham was I am, is this how it is in the Greek?
yeah, ego eimi, yeah. Yes. So yeah, you could do all caps, I am. Translation philosophy. And ha artas, remember Amy is going to take the what case to follow it? Remember? It's a nominative case, Amy. Another noun, well, noun, adjective, but it's going to be what case?
You said it's an equals, right? So
Yeah, so
it's
nominative, yes. So this is nominative, right? Ha artas, I mean. So I am the bread. And tes zoes as an adjective of life, of the life, but life. Got it? So Matthew 1:21. Atas gar soze tan laan atu apa ton harmation aton. You know everyone, or it's on your vocabulary, everyone but one word, and soze. And soze is in the future, which we haven't learned yet, so it's but I will save. And gar is for, and I did. If you look at your vocabulary, just real quick, you'll see some have a post-positive next to it. Those that have post-positive is going to come after the very first word in a sentence. So this would be, so in English, you have to keep in mind that this is going to be, we have to think this is first, so it'd be like for. Now, we got to figure out what use of atos this is. Now, I believe there's two uses, right? It's not this, because this is a pronoun. It's atos, not hatos, or not even hutos, not atos.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the nominative singular, isn't it?
Yeah, but
Masculine?
yes. It's either he or it could be a special case, because you have to keep in mind atos has two special usages. Which one would we pick? Because really, atos in the nominative case rarely happens as the subject.
So this would be the predicate position, which would mean self, or at least some form of that.
Yes, self, yep. For he himself. Sorry, I can't write here. Will save. And ton, la'an is in the accusative case, and it's from la'as, which means people. You will save the people. And apa is a preposition, which means, does anyone remember? Anyone want to guess? From. And I'm out of room. If I could change this. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Save the people from the hamartion. You remember what that is? The sin, and it's plural, right? Actually, yep, from the sins. And we have aton. What is aton? Of them.
Yeah.
So in English, we don't really say of them. We'll say, for he himself will save the people from their sins. Got it? Pretty simple.
You called him Jesus, for he will save his people. So that would be a different.
I forgot to look at 2, which is his
I was kind of
people.
wondering if it was like a
He himself
variant
will
or
save
something, but
his people.
I guess in some translations where it would say, he will save his people. How do they come up with that?
He will save his people.
Yeah, he will save his people from.
So it would be in his. Well, I'd have to. Is that the?
which
Really? Maybe I'm just
it might be that
remembering something.
It may be in every one of the Gospels, but it would.
Maybe different.
Maybe it's the Message Bible?
Or is that a prophecy?
Huh?
Is that a prophecy that was referenced there? I feel like it was probably a prophecy word, right?
Yeah, it's
I'm sorry, I'll
Are you
talk to you at the end.
referencing
Continue
Isaiah?
so we can, I'll talk about it
you're
at the end. I
referencing
don't want to
Isaiah.
waste time now.
okay. You're fine. So just two last things to look over. Just looking at the demonstrative pronouns. Revelation 22:6 says kai epin moi, hatoi hoi lagoi pistoi kai alethinoi. Blah blah. Okay, so remember what epin means? And he said. Now we don't have the full context here, who the he is, but he said moi. What's moi? It's a personal pronoun under the first person singular and the dative case, and it is to me. Here we go. And he said to me. See how helpful the pronouns are? Then we have hatoi hoi lagoi. Now, do you remember what usage of this is? Remember, there's two primary uses of the demonstrative. One is substantival. The other is what? It's so it modifies the noun. It's like the adjective. So it's in the predicate position.
Oh, yeah, we were talking about it.
Yeah, but you would think it would be in the attributive position. Yeah. So this would be. He said to me, "This," or actually be these words. And it says pistoi kai alethinoi. And you'll notice that there's really not a verb here, is there? Is there? See a verb? In this part right here. You see anything? It's really not a verb. So you're going to have to supply a verb. These words are, not is, are pistoi, which we know, should know that one. It's faithful, are faithful, and true. Got it? And then John 10:1, this is when Jesus says, I am the good shepherd, I believe. And he's talking about these people crossing over the sheepfold and going the wrong, coming through the wrong way. And this is what he says: Ekenos, kleptes, estin, kai, lestes. Now, I know you're not going to know what these two words are. At least you might know what kleptomaniac is. Yeah, thief. But what usage do you think this is going to be? Ekenos. So we have the verb here. So is a thief and a robber. So a kenos. What is a kenos? Huh? Not. That's a demonstrative. Which demonstrative is it?
Nominative is that.
That. Yes. But it can be used in a substantival way, so it's that man. He's talking about the one who crosses over the wrong way, by a different way. And he's saying that man is a thief and a robber. So any questions on this? I know we covered a lot, but generally, if you just memorize those, it's more so I want you to memorize the things that happen in chapter 7, the personal pronouns, more than anything else, and then those just 11 words. So if you just get familiar with the personal pronouns, it'll help your translation so much, because personal pronouns almost happen every other sentence, if not every sentence, and it's just something that you need. The demonstrative pronouns, they don't happen as often, so I'm not as worried about that, but personal pronouns happen a lot. So if you get chapter 7 down, that's really the most important chapter in this whole entire grammar. And really, after today, we know basically all the basics of Greek. So all we're going to start learning now is different forms of the verb. And we're also going to learn the infinitive and the participle. So that's basically it. We learn the basics. We learn nouns, we learn the verb system, we learn the adjectives, the pronouns, and we're good. So it's just from now on, it's just learning the different types of verbs and how they function. You're going to have future, you're going to have past tense stuff. You have middle and passive and active and everything. Cool. John, you want to close this in prayer?
Not really, but I will.
Okay.